Legal Edition. I'm your host, Attorney Mary Kay Loyan. Our program today is the second in the series, Dirty Little Secrets the Oil and Gas Industry Doesn't Want You to Know. The show topic is the path less traveled from dirty fossil fuel to clean renewable energy, creating state-based infrastructures that promote in-state job growth while also benefiting the local environment. Our guest today is Dr. Anthony Ingraffea. He's the Dwight C. Baum and Professor of Engineering and the Weiss Presidential Teaching Fellow at Cornell University. He's also President of Physicians, Scientists, and Engineers for Healthy Energy. Let's welcome Dr. Anthony Ingraffea. Welcome, Dr. Ingraffea.
Good to be here with you, Mary Kay. Thank you.
Thank you. From what I understand, PLCs, the organization, the mission is to bring transparency to the energy industry and to the public, to legislators. Could you elaborate upon that, please?
Sure. We founded the organization, Physicians, Scientists, and Engineers for Healthy Energy, because we detected about 5 years ago that there really was no reliable source of highly vetted information, data, technology, science, and engineering related to all forms of energy production and use in the U.S. and the world abroad. We were told oftentimes by grassroots activists, legislators, regulators, that they really didn't have a transparent and accurate source of such information. So we attempt to fill that void by either finding such information from peer-reviewed science done by academicians, our national laboratories, or by reliable government sources, or, if necessary, stimulating the production of that science, either through our own mechanisms, we have 3 Ph.D.s on our staff, or stimulating academics around the world to produce the science having to do with the environment, health, and climate change, so that really people can understand, everybody can understand, the very complex interrelationships between energy, health, and the environment.
And they are all related.
They are all related. Let me add one more that's
sure.
In the front pages recently, global politics. They're all interrelated.
Yes, as we are seeing, everything has been, that you've discussed has been in the news these days,
Yes.
And we need to bring it to the forefront so that people know the real truth, the real science. And being a scientist yourself, you are privy to that information more so than the public.
Well, I think so. I hope so.
And that's why we're here today.
Yes.
Now, what's your opinion about the methodology used to harvest these alternative fuels, the infrastructures?
Okay. So let's talk about the negative side of energy for a moment, and it
Sure.
all has to do with shale. We were well on our way as a global society to ridding ourselves of fossil fuels until about 10 years ago, when the oil and gas industry discovered, with public funding I should add, that there was another resource available. There was another dark, dank corner of the hydrocarbon warehouse that no one had bothered to look in, rat infested. And they discovered that shale, which had been overlooked for the entire history of hydrocarbon development, was a viable new resource. And so was born the so-called Shale Revolution, getting natural gas, methane, and oil, and everything in between natural gas and oil, out of shale suddenly became feasible, technically, and in some instances, economically viable in this country. That whole idea was originated in the U.S., homegrown. So people then naturally said, well, we're not past peak oil because we can continue to produce as much oil as we want forever from shale, because there's a lot of shale all over the world. Virtually every country has some sort of shale. And so the first myth was born. We're never going to run out of gas and oil. So that's one of the dirty little secrets that you referred to.
Yes.
And this is a myth that Wall Street has bought into, although they're now getting kind of edgy about it. Our politicians on both sides of the aisle have bought into for various reasons, because, as I said, you can start using newfound oil and gas resources as a geopolitical cudgel. You can start playing hydrocarbon roulette with Vladimir Putin if you'd like. And no one initially said, well, wait a minute, this is, as you said, an extreme form of hydrocarbon development. By definition, if it had been non-extreme, we would have been doing it for the
Long
last
ago.
100 years.
Exactly.
We waited until the very last because it's the hardest stuff to get out of the ground.
And is it the dirtiest?
It's the dirtiest by far in terms of it being, just like every other fossil fuel, methane and oil coming out of shale. When you burn it, you produce carbon dioxide, the principal greenhouse gas. But it's even dirtier in the sense that when you try to get methane, natural gas, out of shale, you leak a lot of that methane into the atmosphere. And what very few people, even today, after 4 or 5 years of our trying to tell them, including the White House, methane is a worse greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide.
Can you elaborate on
Sure.
that?
Sure. So greenhouse gases, simply put, whether it's carbon dioxide, methane, or other greenhouse gases, hold heat in the atmosphere. That's as simply as I can put it. It's very complex atmospheric chemistry, but they hold heat in the atmosphere.
Like a blanket.
Like a blanket. Hence, it's called a greenhouse effect. It's like having the glass in your greenhouse holds the heat in because of thermodynamics. So here there are thermodynamics and atmospheric chemistry in effect that says if you put carbon dioxide in the atmosphere or methane in the atmosphere, you hold more heat. But here's the rub. Methane holds a lot more heat than carbon dioxide by factors of 10.
Wow.
And those factors depend upon a policy decision. How long are you willing to make that measurement? In other words, if I say, starting today and looking into the future, over what period of time do I want to gauge how much more heat is trapped by methane than carbon dioxide? That's a policy decision.
Yes.
Because if, say, the administration says we have 100 years to work on climate change, then methane is only about 34 times more heat trapping than carbon dioxide. That's huge. Mm-hmm. That means it takes 34 times more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere to do the same harm to climate change as 1 unit of methane.
Wow.
But if your policy decision is, as it should be, we don't have 100 years.
No, we don't.
IPCC says that. Mm-hmm. We have at most 30, 35 years at our present rate of hydrocarbon use on the face of the earth before we reach that awesome 2 degrees centigrade change, which is likely to precipitate tipping points, and then our children and our grandchildren will inherit the wind, literally. So if we're only going to wait, say, 20 years to do something, then methane is over 85 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So very little methane has the same effect of one heck of a lot of carbon dioxide. So any attempt right now through technology, science, policy, mm-hmm. to reduce carbon dioxide emissions is essential. It's absolutely essential that we do that. But if that's all we do, nothing much happens in our fight against climate change for 50 or 60 years. In other words, it will be too late. If at the same time you reduce both carbon dioxide and methane
simultaneously,
then we have a chance of never reaching that 2 degrees centigrade change in this century. It's the only way, in fact, that climate scientists have determined. IPCC has said this. If you simultaneously reduce carbon dioxide emissions and methane, unburned natural gas emissions, then we have a chance of not getting to that 2 degrees centigrade. Okay, how do you reduce both carbon dioxide and methane?
Right, how do you do that?
By A, not burning any fossil fuels, because they all produce carbon dioxide, and not mining, drilling for, fracking for, producing, storing, processing, transmitting through pipelines, methane, natural gas. That's the clue. That is the crucial key to giving our generation, our children's generation, a chance of not getting to that 2 degrees tipping point. It's the only way to do it. That's what the climate science says.
Yeah. And a lot of people will say, well, what's 2 degrees? What's that going to do?
2 degrees centigrade, not 2 degrees Fahrenheit. The Earth's atmosphere is very, very sensitive to small temperature changes. Some people think, well, 2 degrees centigrade, between any 2 days in the summertime, you can see more than a 2 degrees centigrade.
And that's
doesn't
their
change
argument.
us. Well, it's a false argument. That's 2 degrees average over the face of the Earth. A 2 degrees centigrade change from early this century would do what we're actually seeing happening: retreat of the glaciers, melting of the polar ice cap, melting of the Greenland ice cap, destruction of much of the Antarctic ice cap, warming of the oceans, acidification of the oceans, killing of coral reefs, and most importantly, the thing that most Americans can immediately see, because they can't see the North Pole, they can't see the South Pole, they don't have a pH indicator in their fingertip when they go wading in the ocean and say, well, it's a little bit more acidic than it used to be.
Right.
The only thing Americans see is weather change. And part of climate change is weather change. And when we get to that 2 degrees, we're well on our way, we're more than 1/3 of the way there now, we're going to see what scientists call more extreme weather. Have we had any more extreme weather recently?
We certainly have.
Hotter hots, colder colds, more floods, more intense hurricane and tornado activity.
More property damage.
More property damage. More growth of arid lands in the U.S. Read climate change.
Right. And what troubles me is recently read too that tar sands, they want to bring those in, and that is even dirtier from what I understand than the shale. Is that correct?
The production, the mining, the production, the processing, the transport, and the eventual refining and use of tar sands is by far the dirtiest form of energy on the face of the earth.
To me, that would be the nail in the coffin.
Well, that's exactly the phrase that Dr. Jim Hansen, recently retired from NASA, who is the guru of climate change. He's the person who first warned Washington over 25 years ago. We are going to experience climate change because of hydrocarbon use. And his phrase was almost exactly yours. If we take all the tar sands that they claim that they're able to mine and get them into the hydrocarbon chain, game's over.
And the health effects will be as well. I mean, from what I understand, the health effects of all these infrastructures are just horrific.
So the bottom line is always health effects. In fact, the bottom line from an economic, sociological, and political point of view is the bottom line is always health versus wealth. Yes. When has it never been that? Doesn't matter what industry you're talking about. You can increase the wealth of a few at the expense of the health of the many, which is exactly what's going on with climate change. The shareholders, the employees, the boards of directors of the hydrocarbon industry are going to continue to gain. But the health effects are going to be shared by everybody on the face of the earth. And they're not future health effects. That's another misconception. Another dirty little secret. People are thinking, well, when climate change happens, there might be health effects.
There
have always been health effects from the use of hydrocarbons. 4,000 people a year die in the state of New York because of our use of hydrocarbons for energy. That's a fact.
Through lung cancer and
lung cancer,
asthma.
Emphysema, and all the other
asthmatic, respiratory.
Exactly. The government says tens of thousands of people in the U.S. die because we burn coal to generate electricity. We're already killing ourselves. We're just going to do it on a very, very large scale when we transition from the local health effects of breathing bad air to the global health effects of climate change.
So basically, even those that are looking to gain wealth, they're essentially breathing the same air as everybody else.
Sure.
So the money is not going to help them live any longer, live any better, unless they want to walk around with a respirator.
You got it. Yeah.
And do their baking that way.
Live in a plexiglass bubble. Yeah.
That's the part that's always amazed me. We share this earth, and why are some so devoted, believing that it's not going to happen when the signs are clearly visible on a daily basis?
Much wiser people than I have pointed out that when the pocketbook is on the table, you can make all kinds of very weird decisions about your personal
choices.
Choices, thank you. Good word.
Well, now that we've getting the information out there to the people about how not only these gases last a long time, but the potency and the effects, they seem like they're exponential. What is your plan? I have read numerous white papers that you and your colleagues have authored. What are some of the plans that you have to get the states working towards clean energy?
Glad you asked the question. So, in addition to saying no to unhealthy forms of energy, our organization, physicians, scientists, and engineers, and other like-minded organizations have for many years realized that you can't just shut down all hydrocarbon use overnight. We should have been shutting it down beginning back in the 70s when we first saw the first hydrocarbon energy crisis, but we didn't. We didn't take that warning light 40 years ago. But now we're stuck with using even more hydrocarbons than ever on the face of the earth for all forms of energy, electricity, transportation, home heating, industrial purposes, and we just can't shut it down overnight. But we must make the transition as quickly as possible, and more importantly, we have to start that transition as quickly as possible.
It's imperative.
Imperative. We don't have a choice. So the direct answer to your question is, at the same time we're showing people why the science says we shouldn't be increasing our production of hydrocarbons from shale, we should be decreasing that and increasing as a substitute for all forms of energy, renewables. Now that's not a new message.
No.
Okay? But what we did is we put numbers behind it. We got the best social scientists, economic scientists, atmospheric scientists, engineers, and lawyers and politicians to work together for a period of 2 years to craft a plan to show how in the state of New York, we took as New York a first example, in the state of New York by 2030, we can completely transform all energy use in New York State from right now about 80% hydrocarbons to nearly no hydrocarbons.
That's
for all end
incredible.
uses, electricity, transportation, home heating, industrial processes.
Tell us more about your plan.
The technologies for the plan are obviously wind, water, solar, in their various forms, and geothermal. So people are familiar with wind generators nowadays. Sure. They've all seen one. People are familiar with solar panels. People are familiar with hydroelectric. Some people are familiar with taking heat out of the earth, geothermal. But what had never been done just for a state is to ask the following questions. One, how much energy is that state using today of all types?
Which is critical.
Which is critical. You got to know what you got to replace.
You got to know, right.
Okay. Two, how much energy are you going to need going forward because population changes, technology changes, extrapolate future demand. Three, what kinds of renewable? There's various kinds of solar, various kinds of wind, various kinds of geothermal, various kinds of hydro. For example, you can have onshore wind, offshore wind. You can have concentrated solar, you can have solar panels. You can have solar farms. You can have geothermal. What proportion of each of those would meet current and future demands, while at the same time decreasing energy costs, which is
unbelievable.
everybody should go for.
Yeah.
Providing jobs, not only jobs to construct all these new sources of energy, but to maintain them and to run them.
And that's in-state jobs.
In-state jobs, not guys coming up from Texas and Oklahoma who have never seen snow before,
right,
to drill holes in the ground, build pipelines, and then they go back home.
So not only are you helping the environment, you're actually helping the local economy.
Exactly.
So it's a win-win.
Exactly.
So why aren't they doing it?
Political will and lobbying. The most powerful lobby on the face of the earth is the oil and gas industry. So they don't want to die. I don't blame them. It's an industry. It doesn't want to die.
But we're all going to die if something's not going to be done.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. So politicians right now are, they're all over the map on climate change, but they're all sort of concentrated at one point saying, yeah, this hydrocarbon business is pretty lucrative, and we got more, U.S. now has more oil and shale than we thought we had. But as you said, but if we produce it, we're killing ourselves.
Exactly. I mean, it's
Seems
like, it's a
ludicrous,
no-brainer.
right?
It's a no-brainer.
Yes.
You know, it's like a get-rich-quick scheme.
You got it.
You know, it's too good to be true. It
Yep.
usually is.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly.
So we need to be smart about this. Time is not on our side.
No, it's
Time
not.
is actually our enemy.
We've wasted decades.
Exactly. So tell us, how do you think this plan can work? It's building infrastructures within each state. Each state would have its own infrastructure, and they would have like geothermal plants that would, instead of coal-fired
Yes.
or gas-fired plants. And what about the cost of doing this, the cost of building them?
Lots of good questions. So the first plan we put forward and published in a peer-reviewed journal. It wasn't a white paper. It was literally a peer-reviewed scientific investigation of what would New York State have to do to transform itself to nearly a completely renewable energy economy by 2030. That plan was so well received, we decided to do it for the other 49 states. And all your listeners right now can go to their favorite web browser and type in The Solutions Project, all one word, thesolutionsproject.org. Up pops a map of the US, click on your state, and here's your plan. Here's how much solar, here's how much wind, here's how much water, here's how much geothermal, and here are the effects. These are the number of construction jobs over the next 40 years. These are the long-term jobs that will be had. These will be the decreased cost of electricity for you. This will be the decreased cost for healthcare for you. These will be the decreased costs in climate change protection for you. It's all there, all worked out for every one of the 50 states. Now let me contrast that with what just came out of the White House by way of the Environmental Protection Agency just a week ago. A proposal to control carbon dioxide emissions from existing power plants. Now that's good. There is no doubt, let there be no doubt, that we have to control carbon dioxide emissions from existing power plants.
We have to control what we have right now.
We have to control what we have. But that plan focuses only on power plants. It focuses only on carbon dioxide, and it leaves up to each state what to do so that by 2030 they reduce their carbon dioxide emissions by 30%.
And we know what states are doing now with Obamacare.
Yeah.
So this is not a good thing.
This is not a good thing. As an attorney, you know what's going to happen.
Yes, I know exactly
Before
what's going to happen.
those are proposed new EPA regulations. There's a significant segment in the Congress that not only would not want to approve any new EPA regulations, they want to defund the EPA.
Exactly.
So by the time these proposed regulations are watered down, argued out in court, it's going to be decades.
It's too late.
It's too late.
It's too late.
It's too little too late, because a 30% reduction in only carbon dioxide from only one segment, power generation,
yes, it's not going to do it.
Not going to do it.
And as a scientist yourself, you are privy to all this information.
Yes.
And, you know, there are always going to be the denialists. You know, that's a given. But, you know, this is proven. The scientists, the vast majority of scientists are behind you. You could have a few stragglers that are being lobbied by the other side. But the vast majority of scientists are with you. So this is not new news.
No.
This is just well-vetted news.
Yes. Now is the time for more chapters for Profiles in Courage.
Right. So what should people do? Call their legislators?
First of all, log on to thesolutionsproject.org, click on your state, take a look at what it's going to take in your state to transform your state by 2030 to a nearly completely renewable energy economy. Then ask yourself, what can I do to facilitate that plan? And the answer is a lot, because a major part of that plan is efficiency and conservation.
What about tax incentives too? Those are being given out, I think, on a state-by-state basis as well.
Then you ask, what can I do in the environment I control? My home, my car. Well, if you can put solar panels on your roof, you should. And in many states, it's very economical to do so. In many states, it doesn't cost you a penny. Okay. Do you really need the 18-mile-per-gallon pickup to commute back and forth to work?
Exactly.
Okay. The gas you burn today is taking energy away from your kids tomorrow. Sorry, that's the generational greed part that we all have to come to grips with.
Right.
So there are things that everybody can do in their own home. The usual things: make the home more energy efficient, do an energy audit, more insulation, better windows, solar, geothermal heat, or air source heating and cooling. Get an air source or ground source water heater. If everybody in the country did a piece of that, we wouldn't have to be importing oil from the Far East,
That's
Middle
right.
East.
Now, that actual white paper you have, they can also read that too.
Absolutely.
Where would they need to go to see that?
Go to our website, PSE Healthy Energy, psehealthyenergy.org. Download the white paper. It will instruct you of all the things that I'm talking about now that you can do in your own environment. But now you're a member of a community. You vote and pay taxes. Okay. So what can you do in your community? I'll give you an example. Ithaca, New York, we're solarizing the entire county of Tompkins County. We're going to have thousands of homes with solar panels in upstate New York. There are people out there right now who say you can't put solar panels in upstate New York, they don't work. Well, ask the Germans about solar panels. Okay.
They've made an entire industry of that.
We have a community scale wind farm under construction. And we have a coal-fired power plant that's going to be shut down, and if we have our way with it, it's going to be converted into a renewable energy facility. So you can do things in the home level, your car level, your community level, but even more important is to use your influence as a voter and a taxpayer to get the message to the state legislators that we don't want to wait any longer.
And I just want to mention too, there's a proposed pipeline going from that's proposed from New York through Massachusetts, and people don't know that the energy industry is proposing that the ratepayers, pay for that. So for these people that think that they're going to get a free ride, are going to get cheap energy? No. Okay. So you're going to be paying more by paying for the pipeline and paying and health costs as well.
Yeah. A couple points on pipelines, whether they're new or they're old. It is highly likely that both old and proposed new gas pipelines aren't going to be bringing natural gas to your home. They're going to be bringing it to liquefied natural gas plants that are being approved every week, new ones all around the East Coast, Gulf Coast, and West Coast, to ship it overseas.
Right.
And when that gas goes overseas, guess what happens to the price of gas at home?
It goes up.
It goes up.
Supply and demand.
Supply and demand. And by the way, those old pipelines leak. Who pays for the leaking gas?
We all do.
Yes, it's included in your rate.
Right.
So whether you burn the gas or not, you're still paying for it.
One way or the other.
And when it leaks, it's back to the argument that we had when we started this conversation. It's a greenhouse gas. The more gas you demand for your home, or God forbid, your natural gas-powered car, the more gas you demand, the more gas has to come through that leaky pipeline system, and the more you're exacerbating climate change by your demand.
And we don't
so
have...
just say no to fossil fuels.
Right, and we are out of time,
yes.
Literally. Thank you, Dr. Ingraffea,
Thank you very much,
being
Mary
my
Kay.
guest.
Sure.
And thank you for tuning in. We hope you will visit our website, thelegaledition.com, to see more about Dr. Ingraffea and his projects. And remember, this is for informational purposes only. Please consult a professional of your choosing, and we hope you will tune in next time for more of The Legal Edition.